Want to avoid the mistakes that leave most beginner saxophone players frustrated? After teaching thousands of new players, I know that the fastest results come from building strong fundamentals on day one. So in this video, I've put together 4 of my most popular tutorials where I show you step by step how to set up your sax, how to get your first great sounds, and use the right fingerings so you can start making music right away. I also made you this free PDF course guide and fingering chart download. All you got to do is click the link below to grab those. Hey there, Jay Metcalf here, and welcome to lesson 1 of the free Better Sax Beginners course. This is the most important step today and every time you get your saxophone out to play. Before we even get the instrument out of the case, we've got to make sure our mouthpiece and reed are set up correctly. We always want to take our time with this step because it takes some very careful alignment. Now, as a beginner, you're going to want to go quite slowly at first. This is a saxophone mouthpiece. They come in different sizes, colors, and can be made with a variety of materials, the most common being plastic, hard rubber, and metal. This is a saxophone reed. It works together with the mouthpiece to create the sound by vibrating when you blow air into the instrument. Reeds are traditionally made out of cane, but there are also some synthetic reeds made out of different materials. Reeds come in different strengths, and if you're a beginner, I recommend you start with a number 2 reed. For young kids, you can even go with a 1.5 strength. This device is called a ligature, and its job is to hold the reed in place on the mouthpiece. Keep in mind that there are saxophone mouthpieces and reeds made in different sizes for specific instruments. Here I've got an alto saxophone, so I've got with it an alto saxophone mouthpiece and an alto saxophone reed. Also keep in mind that there are different sized ligatures made to fit different size mouthpieces. So if you need to purchase any of these things, you may need to verify that you're getting the correct size for your instrument first. In the description below, I've put links to my recommendations for good mouthpieces, reeds, and ligatures for beginners. But keep in mind, the saxophone you've got probably already has this stuff in it. Let's start by preparing our reed. Now, reeds are very delicate and will break easily. So you want to avoid touching the tip of the reed, the thin part up here. We want our reed to always be free of chips or splits, so when handling it, I always hold it by the bottom end here. Cane reeds need to be wet in order to work properly. Now, you could do like me and just put it in your mouth for 15 or 20 seconds to wet it. Make sure you wet both ends of the reed though. You see, I wet the whole thing there. You could also just put your reed into a glass of water. We need to place the flat side of the reed against the flat side of the mouthpiece, line it all up, and then secure it in place with the ligature. The procedure for doing this may be a little awkward at first. Let me show you how I do it. First, make sure you've got plenty of light so you can see what you're doing. Now, I hold my mouthpiece and ligature in my left hand because I'm right-handed. Notice where on the mouthpiece I'm holding my ligature and that the screw or screws of my ligature are loosened. I then take my wet reed and use it to moisten the flat part of the mouthpiece like this. This moisture will act as a sort of glue that will help make a better airtight seal between the reed and the mouthpiece. Now I slide my reed back end first between the ligature and the mouthpiece while simultaneously pulling the ligature down in place. In this procedure, I never touch the tip of the reed. The ligature screws need to be quite loose to allow space for the reed and room for adjustment. Once I've got the reed and the ligature loosely in place, it's time for the fine-tuning adjustments. I want to get the reed lined up perfectly with the tip and the rails of the mouthpiece. Take your time with this. If the reed is even a little bit crooked, your sound will suffer and it will be more difficult to play. I'm looking at the tip and side rails of the mouthpiece as my visual guide. Sometimes there will be a little bit of each side of the mouthpiece showing, and you can use this to try to get everything as even and symmetrical as possible. I then like to get the tip of the reed lined up exactly with the tip of the mouthpiece. Once the reed is perfectly aligned with the mouthpiece, I then make sure my ligature is perfectly centered on the reed. When everything's ready, I tighten up the screw or screws of my ligature. Now, it doesn't need to be super tight. It just needs to be tight enough to hold everything in place while you put the mouthpiece on your neck, or when you move it around to make adjustments, or when you take it off. And when I'm done, I always do a suction test. This is not necessary at all, but it helps me to know if my reed is making a good seal with the mouthpiece. To do this, you just take the open end of the mouthpiece, put it against your palm, and then suck out all the air. A good pop like that is always very satisfying. If I don't get good suction, then I know there's a problem somewhere along the line. It could be that my reed is damaged. It could be that my reed is not properly aligned with my mouthpiece, that it's warped, or maybe there's something wrong with my ligature. Now, the next step is going to be to put the mouthpiece onto the neck. Now, you want to have a nice tight fit, but you don't want it to be too tight that you can't turn the mouthpiece back and forth. I usually put my mouthpiece on with one twist like that. And then I'm going to need to do some micro adjustments to get it positioned exactly. You always want to put the mouthpiece onto the neck on its own and then put the neck onto the body of the saxophone. This will help avoid damage to your neck tenon. If your instrument is new and your mouthpiece is fitting on the cork too tightly, you could always put some cork grease on there for the first week or so that you've got your instrument. You want to put it onto the cork and rub it in as deeply as you can. In the next lesson, we're going to learn how to blow into the mouthpiece and make a good sound with a good saxophone embouchure. In the description below, there is a link that will take you to a page where you can download a free PDF guide. This is the guide that goes along with this course and has all of the information in this beginner's course so you can work through it offline and just keep it around for reference whenever you need it. Welcome to lesson 2 of the Better Sax Beginners course. In the last lesson, we learned how to set up our mouthpiece and reed properly to get the best results and sound. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to get a sound out of your instrument with a good saxophone embouchure. We're going to start off where we left off last time with the mouthpiece and reed set up, ready to play on the neck. For anyone who doesn't know, the word embouchure just refers to everything that's going on with your mouth when you play the saxophone. Now, we're not working with the whole saxophone put together yet because I just want you to focus on one thing at a time. So for this lesson, we're just going to be working with the mouthpiece and the neck. First, it's important for you to understand what's going on physically when we play the saxophone. When we blow air into the instrument, our air causes this reed to vibrate, and it vibrates really fast. If we play, for example, the note A, which has a frequency of 440 hertz, this reed is going to open and close against the mouthpiece 440 times per second. Mind blown? That still blows my mind a little bit. Now you can understand why we need to make such a perfect seal between the reed and the mouthpiece. The length of the tube at the other end of the mouthpiece determines which note comes out when we play. Okay, enough science. Let's go and make some noise on this thing. Ready? The mouthpiece is going to go into our mouth with the reed on the bottom. Your top teeth are going to be in contact with the top of the mouthpiece. Your bottom lip is going to sit between your bottom teeth and the reed, and it's going to act like a soft, fleshy cushion for the reed to vibrate on. Your bottom teeth and jaw act as the support for this cushion. We're going to need to put a slight amount of pressure on the reed when we play to help control the sound. However, we don't want to bite down too hard. In the beginning, the goal is to find the right amount of pressure to put on the reed. Let's try playing a note. Take a deep breath, set your embouchure, putting a little pressure on the reed, and blow the longest note you can. If your reed is set up well, the way I showed you in the last video, you should be able to get a sound out here pretty easily. Now I want you to experiment with some variables. First, we need to find how much of the mouthpiece to put in our mouths. If you look from the side, you'll see the point at which the reed comes in contact with the mouthpiece. This is roughly the spot where we apply the slight pressure from the bottom lip. A common mistake for beginners is not putting enough of the mouthpiece in their mouth and just playing on the very tip. You'll get a better sound and have more control with the right amount of mouthpiece in your mouth. So now try blowing a few more notes and experiment with how much mouthpiece you put in your mouth. Notice the difference. The next variable is going to be our bottom lip. As I said earlier, we want our bottom lip to act as a firm and fleshy cushion for the reed to vibrate on. Now, if you roll your bottom lip entirely over your teeth, you lose all of the cushion, and the result is a very thin, weak sound. Now, we all have different shaped and sized lips. So I want you to try to find the ideal placement for you of your bottom lip over your bottom teeth, where you get as much cushion as possible while still maintaining support from your bottom teeth and your jaw. Remember, bring the corners of your mouth in to create this shape. Now go ahead and blow a few more notes, experimenting with your mouth shape and your bottom lip cushion. If I roll my lip all the way in, ooh. If I push my lip all the way out, okay, in both the extremes, I lose control, and that's going to affect your pitch and the quality of your sound. So getting that bottom lip bunched up right in the middle, right where your teeth can support it best, is where we want to be. Now, the last variable is how much pressure we apply from the jaw. Keep in mind that there are a ton of factors at play here. The strength of your reed determines how much resistance there is to the vibration that's going on. The tip opening of your mouthpiece determines the distance that the reed has to travel during its vibration. So more open means more resistance. So when we have less resistance, we're going to be putting less pressure on the reed. That's why we start out playing with very soft reeds and a small tip opening. In the beginning, we haven't yet developed the muscles in our face that form our embouchure. So we're not able to maintain the right amount of pressure that a more resistant reed and mouthpiece setup would require. You may already feel tired just from blowing those few notes. This is normal, and it means you're probably doing it right. Now I want you to blow some more long notes and experiment with the pressure you apply from your jaw. Notice how it changes the sound. So as you can see, by changing the pressure I apply from the jaw, it basically makes the pitch go higher or lower. So we want to try to find the sweet spot, but keep in mind there's room for a little more pressure sometimes and a little less pressure to help play better in tune. As you develop as a saxophone player, your embouchure will strengthen, resulting in more control and a better sound. Just be aware that this takes a lot of time. Think of a saxophone player with a fully developed embouchure as someone who can do 50 push-ups in one go. They had to do push-ups every day for a long time to work up to that level, and they have to continue doing push-ups daily to maintain their strength. So here are the best practices for developing a strong embouchure and beautiful sound. Play your saxophone every day. When you get tired, take breaks. Once you've got a fully developed embouchure, you'll be able to play for hours without getting tired, but this could take years. Don't bite. Biting down on the reed is what we do to compensate for a tired embouchure. When we can't maintain steady pressure with our embouchure muscles, we bite down with a spread out thin bottom lip, and the sound is not going to be good. If you find that you're always biting, in addition to relaxing your jaw, try playing on softer reeds and a more closed mouthpiece. The embouchure technique that I've just outlined for you will work for every style of music and for the vast majority of saxophone players. But everyone is different, and there is room for variations here. At the end of the day, the best embouchure is one that gets us the best results on the saxophone. Part of the process of developing that embouchure is finding out what works best for you as an individual. So I'd like for you to take some time right now, working with just the mouthpiece and the neck, experimenting with your embouchure and everything that I've just explained to you. Feel free to watch this video and any of the other videos in this course as many times as you need to. In the next lesson, we're going to learn the best practices for putting our saxophone together and taking it apart and putting it back in the case. Before you move on, be sure to click the thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. See you in the next lesson. Welcome to Lesson 3 of the Better Sax Beginners course. So far, we've learned how to set up our mouthpiece and reed in Lesson 1. Then we learned how to make our first sound with a good saxophone embouchure in Lesson 2. Now, let's learn how to put the saxophone together properly and where to place our hands and fingers. At this point, you should already have your mouthpiece and reed set up and on your neck, as we learned in Lesson 1. You may want to put your mouthpiece cap on right now. In the beginning, you're going to be much more prone to reed damaging accidents. First thing I do when getting my saxophone out of the case is I put my neck strap on. So let's go ahead and do that. Now let's pick up the saxophone with one hand. When picking up the saxophone with my left hand, I hold it right here in the middle. Now we're going to attach the neck to the body of the saxophone. First, make sure your neck screw is loosened. Then gently place the neck tenon inside the body as straight as possible and give it a little twist. This helps it to go in there a little bit smoother. Once the neck tenon is all the way in, line up this key that sticks out right here with the middle of your neck and tighten the screw. When picking up the saxophone with my right hand, I hold it in the same place, in the middle, giving me a really nice solid grip of the horn, again in a place where there's no keys to worry about. This frees up this little ring here, which is where I'm going to take my other hand and attach my neck strap hook. Now we're going to adjust the height of our neck strap. You've got one of these things on there that can be pulled up and down to make it longer or shorter. If you haven't done so already, take off your mouthpiece cap. We're going to make an adjustment that will bring the top of the mouthpiece up to the top of our teeth. We don't want to be inclining our head forward at all. We want to bring the saxophone up to us. You see now the top of the mouthpiece comes right up to my top teeth, and I can play while maintaining a very straight and upright posture. Now for our hand and finger position. Let's start with the right hand. Place your right thumb underneath this hook over here, and then your index, middle, and ring fingers will rest on these three key pearls here. Your little finger or pinky is going to rest on this key here. The right thumb is not meant to bear any of the weight of the saxophone. That's the job of the neck strap. Your right thumb is really just there to stabilize the instrument. For the left hand, start by placing your thumb on this thumb rest, hanging over the edge just enough so that the tip can action this key with a slight pivot. On the other side, it's a little bit more complicated since we have more buttons than fingers. Most saxophones will have 4 key pearls here, and you're going to want to place your index, middle, and ring finger on the 3 larger ones, skipping over the smaller one for now. There's another key above where my first finger is. On some saxophones, this key is going to have a key pearl as well, which kind of makes it confusing. So just make sure that this small key pearl is between your first and middle fingers. Now we're going to do some fine tuning to get everything in proper alignment before we play. We always want our head to be straight and not tilted to either side. So we're going to turn our mouthpiece on the neck cork in order to get the position just right so that when we're playing, we're putting even pressure on both sides of the reed. Alto, tenor, and baritone saxophones are all designed to be held on the right side of your body, especially when sitting down. When standing up, which is the way I play most of the time, I hold all my saxophones straight out in front and at a slight angle to the right. You're going to want to find the position for you where you can hold the saxophone with relaxed hands, your fingertips on the key pearls, and straight wrists. You see, if I were to hold this alto saxophone straight in front of me, perpendicular to the floor, it would cause my left wrist to bend in this way. And if I were to play like this for a long time, that would be terrible hand position and could lead to injury. So by putting it slightly off to the side, it straightens out that wrist, which is much better for my health and comfort. The exact angle that works best for you is going to depend on your body, on how tall you are, on how long your arms are, and some other things. At this point, you may need to adjust the angle of your mouthpiece, the angle of your neck, or the height of your neck strap. You want to make all the necessary adjustments to get the saxophone to conform to your perfect posture. Now I want you to go stand in front of a mirror holding the saxophone and check the following: that you're standing straight up with good posture, that your neck is not tilted to either side nor front or back, that your neck strap is holding the saxophone high enough so that the top of the mouthpiece comes right up to the top of your teeth, that your fingers are resting lightly on the key pearls, that your wrists are straight, that your shoulders are relaxed and not hunched up, and that your feet are flat on the floor about hip width apart. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to play a bunch of different notes. But for now, I know you're dying to find out what this thing sounds like all put together, so let's play one. I want you to press down all of the keys except for your little fingers, your pinkies. So in your left hand, you're going to press down the thumb key, and then 1, 2, 3. And in your right hand, you're going to press down 1, 2, 3. Now you don't need to squeeze these down with a grip of death. Just put enough pressure to get them to close. Pay careful attention not to accidentally open any of the keys that you find near the palms of your hands. We'll find out what those keys do later on. Now put the mouthpiece in your mouth. Set your embouchure as we learned in the last lesson. Take a deep breath and blow a note for as long as you can. That's a D. If you're playing soprano or tenor saxophone, the note you got is going to be different than the notes you heard me play on the alto saxophone. This is normal, and I'll explain why a little bit later on. I teach my students to start playing with the note D because it's got a lot of keys closed. In the beginning, it's much easier to play notes that have most of the keys closed than the ones that have most of the keys open. When playing this D, Make sure your little fingers are resting lightly on their home keys. You don't want to be doing this. Now I want you to practice closing and opening all the keys to play that D very slowly, concentrating on keeping your fingers on the key pearls all the time. Keep your hands relaxed and your wrists straight. Get used to how it feels to hold the saxophone correctly. Try removing one hand at a time and then bringing it back to the instrument without looking, allowing your fingers to find their homes. Take a few minutes right now and practice making this proper hand and finger position and posture a permanent habit, the way you pick up and hold the saxophone from now on. As I said earlier, in the next lesson, we're going to learn a bunch of notes. So if you haven't done so already, go to the link in the description below where you can download the PDF guide that goes with this course. There's a fingering chart in there that you may want to reference for the next lesson. And I'll see you in lesson 4. Hey there, welcome to lesson 4 of the Better Sax Beginners course. Jay Metcalf here. In this lesson, we're going to learn a bunch of fingerings and notes on the saxophone to get you started. For each note we're going to learn, I will show you here as well as in the on-screen fingering chart. If you haven't done so already, there's a link in the description below that you can visit to download the PDF guide that goes along with this course. In that guide is a fingering chart you can use for reference. We left off in the last lesson having learned our middle D, which is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and the octave key. When talking about fingerings, I'm referring to my index, middle, and ring finger as 1, 2, and 3 in the left hand, and then in the right hand, 1, 2, and 3. The left hand comes first because it's on top. Now you may notice that when you play a D on the saxophone, you're not getting the same note as when you play a D on a piano or a guitar. That's because the saxophone is a transposing instrument. You also may notice that when you play a D on an alto saxophone, you're not getting the same note as when you play a D on a tenor saxophone. That's because different saxophones transpose differently. Later on, watch my video about transposing for saxophones to learn more. For now, don't worry about it. Let's focus on one thing at a time. When demonstrating the fingerings, I'm going to play each note first on alto saxophone and then on tenor saxophone so that you can play along with either instrument. It's important to note that the fingerings and note names are identical on all saxophones. Notes in music follow the first 7 letters of the alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. These correspond to the white keys on the piano. We already know D, so let's start with that one and then work our way down the alphabet backwards. The fingering for middle D is 1, 2, 3 in the left hand, 1, 2, 3 in the right hand, plus the octave key, which gets action by pivoting the tip of the thumb. Remember, take a deep breath, set your firm yet relaxed embouchure, then blow the note. You've got to use enough air to get a good sound, but you don't want to overblow either. I'm going to put on the metronome and hold each note out for 4 beats. When practicing this on your own, please feel free to play these notes for much longer if you can. Moving down the alphabet, our next note is C, which gets played with the middle finger in our left hand. When playing C or any other note with a lot of open keys, make sure your other fingers are resting lightly on the key pearls. You don't want your fingers flying up in the air like this. Check yourself in the mirror to make sure. Next note down the alphabet is B. B is played with our index finger or 1. Again, make sure your other fingers are resting lightly on the key pearls and that your hands stay relaxed. Moving along, the next note is A. Now things get a lot simpler. We're just going to be adding one finger at a time. So we're going to add our middle finger or 2 in the left hand. Remember to take deep breaths before each note and don't bite down on the reed. Now we've come to the end of our 7-letter alphabet. So when we go down from the note A, we get G. To play G, we add another finger in our left hand. So the fingering for G is 1, 2, 3. Check your posture periodically in the mirror to make sure that you're not tensing up. As our notes get lower on the instrument, the amount of air required to play them increases. So you may find it increasingly more difficult to play these notes for as long. So be sure to be filling up your air tank with a nice deep breath before you play each note. Our next note is F, as I'm sure you guessed. And to play it, we're just going to add one finger in our right hand, our first finger. So the fingering for F is 1, 2, 3, 1. Take a deep breath. Be mindful of your posture and finger position. Set your firm yet relaxed embouchure and blow. Next note, as I'm sure you expected, is E. Add one more finger in your right hand, so our fingering for E is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And that brings us back to D. If we add one more finger in our right hand, we get almost the same fingering as our first note, middle D. This note is called low D because it's lower. It's an octave lower, in fact. And hence the reason why we call this the octave key. It's really quite amazing. When you press the octave key, it makes whatever note you're playing jump up an octave. This is one of the reasons why the saxophone is such a well-designed instrument. In fact, the saxophone is the only instrument in the band or orchestra that has an octave key. In case you don't know, an octave is the distance between two notes that share the same name. So from my low D to middle D, the distance or interval is an octave. And on the saxophone, by adding the octave key, my low D jumps back up to where we started, middle D. And I know you've probably figured this out already, but that same trick works for all the other notes we've learned so far. So let's play them. Starting with D with the octave key, or middle D, we're going to play our way back up the alphabet. For all of these notes, the fingering will remain the same, except we're going to add the octave key. Next note up the alphabet is middle E, and middle E is played 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, plus the octave key. Lifting one finger, we get middle F, 1, 2, 3, 1, plus the octave key. Lifting up another finger, we get G, 1, 2, 3, plus the octave key. Now, as our notes start to get higher up on the instrument, there is a natural tendency to tighten up our embouchure and kind of bite down on the reed. Your embouchure muscles probably already feel a bit tired from all this playing, and that's the root cause of this tightening up. So please take a short break if you need to. Also, at any time, if you start to feel a little lightheaded, take a break. This is normal. You're probably not used to taking all these deep breaths, one right after another. As our notes get higher, I want you to resist the urge to tighten up and bite down on the reed. Try to let your air do the work of producing the sound instead. Our next note is high A, the same fingering as low A, 1, 2, plus the octave key. Now for high B, 1 plus the octave key, lift up your middle finger. Be sure to keep all your other fingers resting lightly on their key pearls. And finally, our last note for this lesson, high C, which is our middle finger in the left hand, or 2 plus the octave key. Now, don't worry if you didn't manage to get all of these notes out the first time with a great sound. Feel free to go back and watch this video and play along with this video as many times as you want. I want you to take some time practicing just holding out all of these notes. In the beginning, your embouchure muscles are going to tire quickly, so take breaks. Over time, you're going to build up strength and your sound and endurance will improve. There are lots of other notes on the saxophone, like take all the black keys from the piano, for example. There's also some higher and lower notes that I haven't shown you. The fingerings to all of these can be found in the PDF download linked in the description below. But believe it or not, with the notes I've shown you so far, you already have enough to start taking another free course that I offer. It's called the Play Sax by Ear Crash Course. And if you're feeling ready, I invite you to enroll in that course next. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, I just started playing. I'm a total beginner. How could I be ready to play sax by ear? Now, while I know this course can be somewhat challenging for total beginners, you'll be amazed at how manageable it actually is and how much progress you can make in 1 week. The link to enroll in the Play Sax by Ear Crash Course can also be found in the description below, and I recommend you continue your studies with that as well as some of my other videos here on the YouTube channel.